can move up as well. Can everybody hear me okay? That must mean yes. Of course, thank you everybody for coming out today. It's a beautiful day, so I'm sure it wasn't very hard to get everybody outside. We'll try to get you out of here as quickly as possible, but as our legislators speak, please be formulating any questions that you may have in your mind, because they will be doing a Q&A once they're all done speaking. And of course, naturally, I need to thank Norma Jean for getting this all organized and taking everyone's reservations and cancellations and walk-ins and all that fun stuff, and we're glad we could accommodate everybody. And of course, last but not least, we want to thank Fran and Mark from Powow River Grille for hosting us here. And for the fantastic staff, thank you for taking care of us. We're not always an easy crowd. So I'm going to hand it over to Mark, and we're going to go on with our program.
Thank you very much. I would like to thank Matt and thank Stefanie, the Amesbury Chamber of Commerce, and all the members and all of you folks for selecting us to sponsor what is our 5th annual legislative luncheon here, which sometimes feels amazing to me, but it's been a great opportunity. We appreciate it. It's great to see so many of you out here to support our local, state, and federal legislative team. Let's give them a big hand. Given the economic issues out there, it'll be fascinating to hear their thoughts. And I'm sure many of your comments. I hope that you're all enjoying your lunch. I would like to thank my business partner and an incredible chef, Broadbery, not only for putting together wonderful food, but assembling this great staff. It's all about attitude in life, and we're very lucky that we have a lot of wonderful people both in the kitchen and in the front of the house. Now that I have the mic, I'd like shameless make a few plugs for the business. I'd like to encourage you all to come back tonight. We will have Bill Plant and Friends with live music from 6:30 until closing, featuring Liz Frame, who will be singing. Many of you know Liz, and it should be a fun night with a special menu that Francis has put together. Welcome, John. Welcome. On St. Patrick's, we will have authentic Irish food, which only a man born in Dublin and one of 18 children could put on for us all. And I hope you'll be joining us for St. Pat's Day. Please enjoy our Thursday nights at both restaurants, the Powow and the Plum Island Grille. We have a 3-course wine dinner that is paired with wine at great value, all inclusive, included at $35. In addition to that, I would love you to join me in thinking. We, over the next week, are going to be cleaning up and painting back at the Plum Island Grille. The next day in March that hits degrees, I'm not sure what's happening with the mic here, sorry, but the next Friday that hits 50 degrees, open the deck at the Plum Island Grille. And last but not least, we're very honored to, on Sunday, the 31st of May, to be sponsoring a brunch in support of Congressman John Tierney here at the Powow River Grille. There are posters in the front windows with the phone number for his campaign team, or you can ask and inquire at any of our staff here, and we'd be happy to hook you up. Please come on out and support John May 31st. It is my great honor to introduce a person familiar to us all, who will be our next speaker, our mayor, Thatcher Kezer, who has been an incredible guy and led us through a major flood that was a national disaster into this economy. I think if you look at our legislative team as a basketball team, and the basketball is the economic stimulus money, then we are lucky to have John to throw the court into the state court, and to have Steve and Mike to bring it down court, and then we rely on Thatcher to try to put the money in the hoop.
Thanks, Mark. Actually, I prefer hockey analogies, since that was my sport, and being a goaltender, getting hit with a lot of slap shots, And every time you let one by, they keep track of it up on the scoreboard for you. Fits right in with my current job, I think. I am pleased to be here today. I look forward to this event each year because it really is an opportunity for this community and all from the surrounding communities to come here and really have an opportunity to talk directly to your government, be it local, state, or federal, and be able to ask questions and get some information, the facts from the people who are right there in the trenches doing the job. So I really look forward to, I think, what the Chamber does to put this together is a great service to the community for all of us. So I thank you very much for organizing this and doing this. To begin with, I always like to make sure I do appropriate introductions of other teammates in the business. As you know, in government, no one person gets to make all the decisions. It's a team effort, and the teams that rise to the top of the standings are the ones that work well together, and those at the bottom of the standings, the ones that don't work well together. And I think Amesbury is very fortunate in rising fast in the standings because we have a great team that's working together during really what is a tough time. So as a form of introduction, over here to my left, all at one table, they have posted the meeting in case anybody wants to know. I have Alan Neal, the council. Jonathan Sherrill. Aaron Ferguson. Broadbery. Earlier with us was Bob LaVoy. He's being at two places at the same time, but he was here earlier, so thank him for coming. Also, elected officials from Amesbury on the school committee and president of the Mass Association of School Committees, Ted Bevo. Where'd you go? Right over there. And I think Stan Schwartz was planning to be here. I don't know if he made it.
Yeah.
Okay, so Stan Schwartz. And if there are any other elected officials, I didn't see you, so I apologize, but thank you for being here. And again, I think it's no secret that all of us in government, in the private sector, are dealing with this tsunami known as this, I guess, economic meltdown, economic crisis. And we are all working our tails off to adjust to the realities that we're faced. And it's during these times that tough decisions have to be made. And again, those organizations that are going to survive this storm are the ones who take real action, who don't just deal with the superficial and the inconsequential, how do I do that word, items, but to deal with the real core fundamental structures of how we do our business in order to get through the storm and actually come out of it stronger than we are going into it. And I know from my level, at the local level, that's exactly what we're doing. I'm sorry, is that my iPhone ringing? Did not plan that. You don't have to call me now. We're dealing with real structures, fundamental structure of local government. We absolutely have to downsize. The phrase that I hear most often from taxpayers, we got to tighten our belts and live within our means. And guess what? Our means is getting on the downcline in the sense of our revenues are falling. Significantly, I mean, off a cliff. And so, at best, for the foreseeable future, our revenues are going to be flat, if not lower. The cost of delivering municipal services is increasing at a clip of 3 to 4% a year. Anybody doing simple math knows you cannot sustain that. We have to change the way we do business. And that's what we're doing here in Amesbury. It comes with pain, it comes with sacrifice, but it's something that we have to do. And something I've learned is when you take on the status quo fights back. But if we are truly going to be in a better position down the road, we have to get through this. And so I've been working with my staff and with municipal council, having their partnership. And let me tell you, they challenge, they ask questions. Just the meeting a few of us had last night. They're doing their jobs well to make sure that we're making the right decisions. And I'd like to repeat as often as I can in regard to one example of what Amesbury's doing, and I think it's especially appreciated here. Several years ago, we moved to the split tax rate. Over my objections, it happened anyways, and that the council and the members sitting here at the table had the political courage to make the right long-term decision for Amesbury to go back to a single tax rate. And when I talk to businesses in Amesbury or businesses potentially moving to Amesbury, one of the things I talk about is where else can you go where you can find the executive branch, the legislative branch, the planning committee, all on the same sheet of music in regard to being able to sustain the businesses we have, attract new businesses, growing the commercial industrial base, which in the long run is going to be to the benefit of the residential taxpayers. And having a municipal council with political courage to face that and do it is a great help in Amesbury. So every chance I get. Some of the other aspects that we're working on, again, is changing some of the financial structures, and the other partners in that are the folks at the state level. A lot of what we do at the local level is predicated upon state laws. And I think one of the benefits we have is that with Steve Baddour, Mike Costello, that we have been sitting down and we have been talking about, again, what are the things that we need at the local level that will make a real difference. And that conversation is productive. And we're working together on that because it's in all our interest to do so. In the last couple of weeks, I've been with the Speaker of the House twice. Even once while I was on vacation. Drove from New Hampshire down to Boston to talk about the challenge of being able to control healthcare costs. That's the biggest dollar savings that we could have that will benefit our communities immediately. And to the Speaker's credit, he heard us mayors that met with him last Thursday, and again at a mayor's meeting with all the mayors from around the state just the other day, he came and spoke at that and reiterated, I hear you. So again, we're getting the response from the state level that we need because we all know what the challenges are. And again, I'm going to, as far as the federal level, we, I think, have one of the best spokespersons, one of the best fighters in for us, again, to deal with the financial challenges, our Congressman Tierney, and I'm sure he'll have plenty of details to share with us in regard to those efforts. So, okay. So that's my welcome for all of you to this luncheon. And again, we are doing our jobs. We're doing them the best of our abilities. And I think the end results will speak for themselves as to the results. So again, I thank you for your support. So it'll be my pleasure then to introduce our Congressman from the 6th District, somebody I've known even before he was in Congress. He was a legend at Salem State College when I was there. He doesn't like me talking about the number of years between that, but he was a legend as a student governor president. And I heard of his name then, and he's living up to that now as our Congressman. So, Congressman Tierney.
everybody. Thank you for inviting me once again this year, and it was great timing, Mayor. You let me get a little bit of that food under my belt, and that worked out well. Thank you, Fran and Mark. Thank you very, very much. You know, just looking at, you know, where usually Patrice and I end up sitting back towards that window there, nice and quiet, and you've got it full to the brim here today, and it's because you do such a great job, and we really appreciate it. Thank you. You know, Mayor, I know how difficult it is to be a mayor at this particular point in time, and how hard it is to be on the council and the school committees, because I hear it every place I go. And I understand that, you know, the frustration that must be there. I know Mike and Steve do as well. You know, every day you're on the streets of this city, and every day you run into people who can share with you their stories one at a time. And we get it when we're back in the district as well, but every single day, and I want to thank you for the work that you're doing and the grace with which you do it, understanding that people might be frustrated, sometimes they might be angry, not at you, but at the situation. And I think you all deal very, very well with that, to be compassionate in your response and to try to address that. I wanted to talk to you not about the details so much today. The details is going to come later this afternoon. We have all the mayors, the state reps, and state senators, and other interested parties in the details of the Recovery and Reinvestment Act coming to a forum that we're holding to try and make sure that we have Jeff Simons from the state coming down, Mike Friery from my office, and others from my office will be there trying to share with people not just the money that's in there and how it's coming out, but also the grants that are available, so that people know there's opportunities for competitive grants to be awarded. And a little bit later, in a week or two, we'll have another workshop where we'll pull together all the communities and all the not-for-profits and some of the businesses and bring in grant writers and try to connect the two around what's in the bill that people could take advantage of in these communities, because we don't want any of our communities or the businesses or not-for-profits in our communities to miss an opportunity. And there are plenty of them there. A lot of them are associated with energy projects, which really could be exciting. It could be moving forward. One of the things that I've been very involved in, as you know, is the green jobs. And we wrote that law, and then we got to put in the energy bill and pass. And we were looking to fund it, so we funded some in the regular annual appropriation, but in this Recovery and Reinvestment Act, $500 million in there for jobs that relate to new alternative energies and efficiencies, and jobs that be created, jobs that will stay here, they can't be exported, they pay well, we'll have a great workforce training and development project around it, and we'll be able to put people to work and get them going in all these communities. And then the communities can take advantage, whether it's retrofitting some of their buildings or modernizing their fleets, do the types of things that make a difference, so that in the long range their energy bills will come down. So I wanted to talk just a little bit here about why it is that we did the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act. There was some debate. You saw on your own TVs that not everybody voted for it. In fact, not everybody in a particular party voted for it. Nobody in a particular party voted for it. But we did have all the members of the majority party in the House vote for it, and we got 3 Republicans in the Senate. Now, put the politics aside, which I wish they would do, but I think we have to do it here. It doesn't make any sense for me to come up here and recount the conversations I've had with you in the past. I know I've come up here and railed about George Bush and the Republican majority year after year after year, but I told you so isn't a policy. So it doesn't make sense for me to recover that ground. But I do think we have to know where we've been in order to be able to measure what we have to do in order to move on. And one of the problems that we have, when you look and you see a vote where nobody on a particular party could find any common ground at all and vote, you have to wonder what's going on. And my friend Scott Lilly, who's an economist with the Center for American Progress, had it right, I think. He said, you know, it looks like it's not so much people can't agree on what to do about the situation, they don't agree what the situation actually is. It's as if you had a flood down in Louisiana again named Katrina, and the water's rushing over the levees, people are drowning, and you have one group of people saying, well, we have to come up with a flood remedy here, we have to build the levees back up, stop the water. But the other group of people are saying, somehow we have to have drought relief. And that's pretty much what it is. They're still fixated on the idea that this is a supply problem. If we just had more supply, everything would be okay. Well, I think most people, including economists that worked for Ronald Reagan, Marty Feldstein, all the way through Mark Zandi, who worked for John McCain, to Paul Krugman, the Nobel laureate who writes the New York Times, to Robert Reich, who worked for Clinton, all agree this is not a supply issue. You know, we've got more than enough cars sitting on the lots. We've got a lot of houses on the market. This is a demand issue. This is about getting enough demand up there. And what all the economists right across the scale have said is, look, if businesses aren't spending because they can't get the credit, if consumers aren't buying because of their situation, If you cannot get out of it by exporting, because this is an international decline in economic conditions, and if your monetary policy is pretty much exhausted, your interest rates are about as low as they can go, there's only one way to close that gap in the gross domestic product, and that is, in fact, that somebody's got to spend. It's got to be the spender of last resort, the federal government. Now, nobody's happy about this because we look at the situation of debt that we already have and the annual deficit as well. I mean, George Bush did come in at a time when there was a $238 billion surplus. We had actually raised that much more than we spent just before he took office. And it was a bright future projected. Over the next 10 years, people thought we'd have a $5.6 trillion surplus instead of a debt. That was if we stayed on course, but we didn't, obviously, and now the Congressional Budget Office tells us there's going to be a debt of about $12 trillion. So from a projected $5.6 trillion surplus to $12 trillion in debt is a huge and momentous move, and it's a tough time for us now to be saying, well, we have to spend, because part of that means borrowing as well. But you have to take action. Every economist to whom we sought advice indicated that you have to take action. There'll be a day later when you have to try to pull your belt in a bit and work on that, but now somebody has got to get this ball rolling again, and that's the way that we have to work on this. It's a $10 trillion or $12 trillion hangover, essentially is the way Joe Stiglitz put it, and Linda Bilmes. And the real question on that now is, will we be able, given the debt and deficit that we have, to do enough so that we'll get the changes that we all voted for and the action and the recovery that we all need in our economy right now. So that's the challenge that's before us, and that's what we're going to be doing. But the President and Congress work together with a three-point plan. Obviously, one is the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act. Second is we've got to do something about the mortgage foreclosure situation. And thirdly, we have to deal with the credit and banking situation that's out there in that. And that's what we're doing. When FDR had a comparable situation back in the 1930s, he acted. And we have to act now. Not action, doing nothing is not an answer. For those people that say, well, we shouldn't have any government involvement, I just remind them that the Glass-Steagall Act, which was a way of keeping the investment banks separate from the commercial banks and keeping things going forward, it was allowed to pass out of existence in 1999. It wasn't 10 years that went by before the investment banks had taken advantage of us and put us in the hole that we're in today. So government does have an appropriate role in appropriate circumstances to move forward and get something done. It's not our local banks that are the problem here. Charlie and Rich Egan and all the others, Mark Welch around here and everything, they know that quite well. They're the ones that acted responsibly. They're the ones that were regulated. And they're the ones that we still rely on to give our small businesses and homeowners some relief. But the others were out of control because government stepped back and out of the picture. And so now we're the ones that have to step forward and do it. But we have to do it reasonably. We have to do it with purpose. And we have to do it with tremendous transparency and oversight. We need to have the confidence of the American people with this. We understand human nature and business nature and government nature, that when you have large amounts of money, there's a proclivity that somewhere there's going to be fraud, waste, and abuse. That's a natural consequence. But we need tremendous oversight, not because my colleagues on the other side of the floor said they want to lie in ambush on mayors and governors and get them for misspending the money. That's not the idea here. The idea is to have oversight, to make sure that we don't have any problems, and when we have them, to change course if we need to stop a program if it isn't working, and to make adjustments. This has to work. As Americans, no matter what party we are, we understand that this has to move forward and we have to use this to our advantage. So there's no lying in ambush. There is instead doing rigorous oversight, having it transparent. It'll be on the internet. You can go and you can see what money is being spent, what the projects are, how many people have been put to work, and you can call up your congressperson, your senator, write the president, or do anything to say, you know what? That's baloney, that isn't working that way, somebody better get on it and have a hearing and change things on that basis or whatever, and do it. Because we need to know that everybody's pushing together on this and that we're going to do it. Will this stop all of the pain? Probably not. Some of you might have seen Paul Krugman's article a week or two ago on the New York Times titled, "Who Will Stop the Pain?" This isn't going to stop all of the pain. This bill that was passed is probably going to stop us from having a much deeper and broader recession than we otherwise would have had. And it's tough to convince people that you've avoided a car wreck. There's not a lot tangible there that you can see. But the estimates are that if we didn't do this act, your unemployment rates would be as high as 12 to 15% by 2010 or 2011. We're expecting that this will stop that from happening. It's not going to create a housing boom, but hopefully it's going to stop the slide in the housing market and turn us in the right direction. These are the things that we're looking to do with this. It will limit the rise in unemployment, it's not going to stop or create another rush on unemployment. We've already lost over 3 million jobs. And what we're looking to do with this bill is to fill those back in and start moving in the right direction. These are all essential if we're going to have an idea of where we're going to go from there. Somebody called it, I think it was Will Straw and Michael Ettinger. They're economic journalists. They called the economic recovery package the Goldilocks plan. They thought it was not too big and not too small, not too fast and not too slow, and in their estimation it was just right. Well, I don't think anybody thinks it's just right because everybody had another idea. There were 435 people in the House and 100 in the Senate that always thought they could write a better bill if they were left to their own devices. None of us got that opportunity. But we had a bill that was essential. You know, it needed to be done. We needed to act. By the fact that it was so large, you obviously couldn't please everybody. And because of the situation was so critical, you needed to have compromises. And we had to get those votes out of the Senate to get the bill passed. I could have written a much bolder bill out of the House. In fact, we did. And then we made some compromises at the request of the President. And then we made further compromises in order to get the senators on board. So everybody has a different idea of how they would do it, but we need to move forward on this, and that's what we're doing. This bill, the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, will probably create between 3 and 3.5 million jobs. Right? That's my primary focus on that, but at the same time we're creating those jobs, we're trying to get something tangible in return. Better education, better job training, better bridges, better roads, a better electrical grid, a better broadband expansion, better research laboratories. You know, right on down the line, at the end of this spending, we should have something that's going to make us more competitive and more able to grow our economy. For all that money that we spent over the last 8 years, whether it was in Iraq, whether it was on a prescription drug plan that didn't negotiate lower prices, whether it was on the fact that now we have to spend more money on veterans benefits because of what happened in Iraq, and enormous amounts of money, right on down the line, we have nothing tangible to show for that in the end. So our investment this time has to give us something that makes us more competitive and makes our economy stronger on the other side of that, and that's how that's designed to work. But there's also money in this bill to help people that are already tremendously affected by this. We need to extend the unemployment benefits for people that are out of work and can't find a way back in. We need to help them be able to afford health insurance in the interim so that they don't all run into bankruptcy and end up driving further over the cliff on that. People, seniors, and people without any funds at all need to be able to heat their homes at the end of the winter here as we go forward on that, and to weatherize them, which will both create jobs as well as save on fuel costs going forward. All of those things are necessary, and we have to do it. There are tax cuts in this bill that, for the first time in a decade, are focused on ordinary households and small businesses instead of targeted just at the high end. And then the last part of this bill goes to cities and towns and states. It makes no sense for us to be creating 3 to 3.5 million jobs if at the same time we're losing public service jobs and public services out the back door. If we're firing teachers and custodians and cops and fire people and public works people all out one end while we're creating jobs on the other, it gets to be counterproductive. So we've got assistance here for the states and then down to the local communities. Tremendous amounts of money for education. It's a twofer. One, it keeps people employed, and two, it builds that infrastructure for later on, the ability for us to be competitive. There's a sizable amount of money coming down in the Title I program, $13 billion nationwide, $12.2 billion nationwide for the Individuals with Disability Education Act. Then there's additional money over and above that, stabilization fund going to the governor, of which he's going to spend 81%, making sure that no school district's allotment on education falls beneath what it would have been for fiscal year 2008. The same with the public higher education. And then any left over after those two things are done goes back to the local education agency for expenditures on education uses, including modernization of their facilities, the energy efficiency on that. So all of these things, job training funds, and monies for mayors. We have the ability to put more police on the street, some fire assistance there for fire apparatus. All of those things are in there to keep people employed and to keep building our infrastructure and provide the public services that we want. 3/4 of this money will be spent by the end of 2010. About 1/4 of it will be spent by the end of this fiscal year, by September. And when you figure that we've got to wait a little bit for the weather here to go and then get everybody up on the construction projects, that's a good boost. But we still expect to be in this problem somewhat in 2010, so spreading that spending out over that period of time makes sense. And even though I mentioned that I was amongst those people that wanted to be bolder and have a bigger plan and more construction, there is something to be said for making sure that you stay within yourself and that you stay within the administrative capacity that you have to actually get the jobs done and manage them and oversee them as they're going forward. So all of those things were considered as we moved on for that. This bill is going to need some follow-up. It's going to need some adjustments, undoubtedly. It's going to need maybe a supplement, you know, but we'll only know that as we get further into it, we see the results, we make the adjustments that we need. But I can tell you that I firmly believe that we needed to act, that something has to be done, that we've thought about this, we took advice, as I said, right across the spectrum. And better for us than not, it was generally agreed advice of what to do. And now we're acting, and we need people to work with us on this. We're going to be as transparent as we can, as responsive as we can. I think that we are Americans, and we know that we're going to come out of this thing. And we're going to come out of it sooner rather than later if we all work together. We've had challenges in this country going back over our entire history, whether it's the Great Depression, whether it's wars, whether energy challenges, and every time as a nation, we've stood up and we've confronted it, we've found a solution because of our own innovation and our own energies and our own qualities as Americans. This is the same way that we're going to deal with this issue. It's the same attentiveness that we're going to put to it, the same kind of confidence and faith. And I'm telling you, we are going to come out the other side of this stronger, a better country, better economic recovery, and more competitive than the rest of the world. Thank you very, very much. Thank you very much. And as we talked about that, obviously, the mayor was correct that this is a team effort, and when the money comes down to the federal level, some of it will go directly out to the cities and towns and not-for-profits and other agencies. Some of it will go through the Small Business Administration, to small business and others. But a lot of it is going to go to the state, where the governor and the legislature are going to have to make decisions about whether or not to waive certain requirements so things can get ready to go quickly enough, who's going to get what projects, whose road and whose bridge and whose water flood project and otherwise are going to get dealt with. And we have a great team up here for that, and we're fortunate to have it, particularly on transportation issues. The chairman has been working on that. He's got great experience under his belt and a lot of good connections and works well with the administration. So it's my pleasure to introduce Senator Steve Baddour.
Thank you very much. I just want to, again, I know we talk a lot about the relationships, but we are very fortunate in this part of the Commonwealth to have John Tierney as our congressman. From the very beginning, he deserves a big round of applause because it's easy to get sort of lost and sort of, you know, sort of get into Washington, sort of forget where you came from, and to sort of focus on these big national issues. But John has really focused on what matters here in this region and all across Massachusetts. So, John, thank you for the great work. Thank you for the work you've done on the stimulus bill, and thanks for sort of just being available and being accessible, because it means a lot to Mike and I know it means a lot to the mayor. But time and time again, for a long time, we have felt as if Washington wasn't there for us. And John has always come and said, we want to be here for you. We just need the right leadership to be there. And I think with this new president, with John in the leadership position that he's in, we're about to see the fruits of that labor and the fruits of the hard work that he's done for a long time. So thank you again. Mike and I, as you all know, are really honored to serve in the legislature to represent all of you. In terms of, there is a lot going on Beacon Hill, and unfortunately right now, a lot of that is negative, in part because of the global economy, in part because of the struggles that we face. We're looking at a $3 to $4 billion deficit in this upcoming budget. But again, as John said, as long as we work together, we'll get through this, and we'll get through this making some very difficult decisions. I know the mayor has made some very difficult decisions here locally, but that's going to be felt in every city or town across the Commonwealth, and it will be felt as well from the Commonwealth and the state budget. But we're committed to working with all of you, because we all know that you really are the engines that drive the economy. What we need to do is make sure as we go forward that when we make these difficult choices and where to cut, and where do we look at to sort of, you know, the governor's talked a lot about new revenues. When we look at that issue, we need to ensure that we're not hampering small businesses. So there's a lot happening on the stimulus bill, as the congressman talked about, in the transportation side, which I unfortunately these days chair that committee. But the Senate President has asked me to serve on a committee that will look at the oversight to ensure that we're not wasting money, to ensure that we don't make the same mistakes we did when we spent money on the big dig. We can't have that happen again, because as the congressman said, There's more at stake than just rebuilding the economy. We need to rebuild the trust of the people of this Commonwealth and the people of this country. Because that's the one thing that's been missing as we move forward to try to reform the system, is that people have very little faith that government can do anything right. And what we need to do as we move forward is to prove once and for all that we can do it right. And I could tell you, with the leadership of John and Mike and all of us, we're going to do everything we can do in terms of the oversight to ensure when that transportation money, when that stimulus money comes to the Commonwealth, that we spend it right and we spend it where it counts and where it matters and where it's going to make a difference for the long term. Because the one thing we can't afford is to have this new additional money come in and to have my grandkids paying a bill and getting nothing in return. So we're committed to doing that. If we were creating a system today, what would it look like? So we heard from all of the experts, and we put together, again, a 268-page bill that really addressed and aggressively went after all of the sacred cows that you've heard about over the decades in transportation. So one of the things, as you all know, we took on, and ever since we did it, I've been driving 55, was the issue of police details. That was not an easy issue to take on, but we did it, and we did it in part because we know that as we move forward in transportation, in order for citizens across the Commonwealth to say, you know what, they're actually doing something right, we needed to take on the sacred cows. And we did with the unions, with the pensions for the MBTA. What other business, if you could tell me, I'd love to join, where you can work for 23 years, retire, and get 100% of your health insurance for the rest of your life? It doesn't make any sense. And as government, we need to, again, change the way we do business, and we did it. So another thing that we took on was, a few years back, we created, the legislature created a Transportation Finance Commission. It was a group of experts from across the Commonwealth that highlighted the problems and highlighted the fixes. And they recommended 22 reforms that they basically came out and said the legislature will never adopt. These are too difficult. There's too many people who have a vested interest in the status quo. And the mayor talked earlier about it's difficult to take on the status quo, and it is. But as we move forward, we need to, and we're doing that. So as part of the Senate plan, we addressed and we incorporated all 22 of the reforms that the Transportation Finance Commission recommended. And you've heard this, you've read the paper. I mean, I am committed, and I know all of us, Michael, and all of us in this region are committed to reforming the transportation system before we raise new revenues. There's no point of raising the gas tax 19 cents, jacking up the tolls on the Tobin to throw that money into a broken system. The system today is broken, and we need to fix it. And there's a commitment on all, I know on the Senate side, I know on the House side, we had a great meeting with Michael and the Speaker not too long ago. We're going to fix it, and we need to fix it before we throw good money back into that broken system. So there's a lot going on, in the Commonwealth. There's a lot going on the municipal level. But we'll get through it, and we're going to get through it because of people like you in this room, because of the relationships that we've developed with the council, with the mayor, with the congressman. But again, I think we all know that we need to make some sacrifices. And those of us who serve in this region understand that. We're committed to that. But these are going to be difficult times. It's not going to be easy from a budgetary perspective. A lot of the things that Mike and I have fought for in the budget over the last 4 or 5 years are going to be zeroed out. It's going to be very difficult for us to continue to fight for the Pettingale House and to fight for so many programs that we know make an enormous difference in the lives of people around this region. But we're committed to doing it. We're going to try our best. We're going to work together as a team, and we'll get through it. So having said that, the one thing I think we get over the time is that we can speak forever as these programs continue to go on. But I really want to open this up for questions, and I know Michael and John does as well. But I want to bring Michael up to talk a little bit about some of the issues. And before I do that, I know the Hines Bridge has been an issue that's been on everyone's minds. Again, working with the mayor, working with Michael and the council and the chamber, and I can tell you the chamber has been extremely cooperative and aggressive at the same time in terms of ensuring that the small businesses that are impacted by that shutdown get the services that they need, and we do everything we can do to open that bridge up as quickly as we can. Having said that, we had a meeting not too long ago with the mayor and some of the councils that attended, and we are looking at a potential opening in the short term for vehicles only, hopefully in the next few months. The goal is going to be, I think from all of us, is to have that bridge open while we're doing the environmental reviews, while we're doing the engineering, while we're looking at how do we replace it, and then shut it down for a short amount of time as we possibly can and fix it. There's no point of opening it, shutting it down, opening it, shutting it down. We want to get it done once and for all. And one of the reforms that we did was to ensure that as we go forward on these projects that we expedite it. Part of the reform bill we did a couple of years ago cut down the time it took for Mass Highway. It usually takes them 10 years, believe it or not, to fix a bridge. We've cut that time in half and even gone even further. So our goal is, again, is to have that bridge done in short term. So we're committed to doing that. We're committed to working with all of you on that. And I know Michael and I have worked pretty aggressively on that. So let me bring up Michael. You all know Mike and I have a great partnership. We have a great relationship. We work very well together. Mike, as you know, there aren't many chairs in the House. The one thing that's good about being in the Senate is that every senator who's part of the majority party gets a chairmanship. Some better than others. Michael, we are very lucky to have in the House. He's got great relationships with the Speaker, Speaker Bobby DeLeo. We reappointed him again as the Chair of Public Safety. And Michael is someone who knows how to get things done. And that's really what we need more of on Beacon Hill. And I can tell you, Mike does a great job. We're lucky to have him. He's no Nick Costello, but he's close. So let me bring up Representative Mike Costello, who's doing a great job for all of us.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, and I can't help but thinking this used to be Poiri's newsstand as a kid, and we'd come in here and get candy and walk to the back and look at the waterfall, and we've come a long way. I mean, Amesbury is still on the move. You know, we're taking it on the chin like everyone else in the world, quite frankly, not just the state and not just our city. Everyone's making tough decisions, and you have to remember that, and we have to keep sight of that everyone is in this together. It's not just our country, it's the world, and it's our communities across the state. You know, and we look at budget deficits, we look at California, we look at others. We have a big deficit. We have to come to grips with that. We're going to grapple. You know, I have, in my area of public safety, we're making tough decisions about corrections, how we're going to put prisoners in, how we're going to, you know, take non-violent offenders and use some alternative sentencing, how we're going to make tough decisions. But everyone is working, and I can tell you, we've always been working. I think, you know, it's easy in a tough economic time to say, okay, whose fault is it? And to point the finger and to be angry. And I understand it. I mean, I understand, you know, before this economic, I guess, almost disaster, everyone was a paycheck away from the poorhouse, or 2 paychecks away from the poorhouse, or, you know, one healthcare disaster away from becoming broke. And now we're in even more difficult times. And so I understand that there's an anger out there. I understand that there's some disappointment out there, and I understand people are afraid. I hope that I hope that that's been in the immediate past. I think we're starting to turn the corner. I think the stimulus plan is going to do pragmatic things, but I also think it's going to do a lot for our psyche as a nation and as a country and as a state. And I think that's what's important. That's important for businesses, because people are saying, hey, can I buy that new car? Or can I go out and afford to take out another a home equity loan to do the addition on my house? Or can I afford to go out to dinner and spend money at a restaurant? And people have been afraid of that. And I think that small businesses will tell you that's what the slowdown's about. It's about people worrying, hey, I might spend that money today, but not have any money tomorrow. And I wanted to point out one thing. I think I was very lucky. 1996, I was an assistant district attorney, and Kevin Burke, who's the Secretary of Public Safety now, let me take a leave of absence to work on a campaign. And I worked for about 6 months. Gary Barrett, who's over in the corner, Ted was here in Amesbury. I know Freddie, Lucy, and many others were here. But we worked on a campaign for a young guy out of Salem who was running for Congress, and he was running against an incumbent Republican. And we knew we had a lot to offer. And we were very, you know, we won. How many votes was it in 1996? 321, because then we worked hard for months in a recounts. But, you know, we elected John Tierney as our congressman. And every year I would hear John come up, and he had fire, enthusiasm, intellect, energy. And every year the one disappointment was that you knew, as hard as he tried, there was no partner for him in the corner office, in the majority party, quite frankly, there was no partner for folks like John. So when they took over the majority, I was extremely happy because he moved rapidly, and I think the Speaker of the House has realized that, and that's why he's in the position he's in today, in the leadership position. But he also, when we took over the corner office, he has just been a leader with both the administration and the Speaker. And I don't say that because we're here to give, it's a mutual, aid society or respect society. I'm telling you the truth. I'm excited, and he took a tough vote. There's a lot of people out there that said this is a bad program, it's going to fail. And I'm sure he got thousands, I know they got thousands of calls on both sides of the issue. And that's not an easy thing in politics. When you get a tough vote, you understand the pressures. Or when you've taken a tough vote, you understand the pressures. And it made it more difficult, quite frankly, that no one on the other side of the aisle took that vote. Because as they were taking that vote, they understood that for the next 2 years, people were waiting for failure. They were waiting to pick out the small, maybe the 5, 10, 15% of fat or mismanagement. And for 2 years, there'll be slings and arrows because you took action that you needed to take. But I'm very proud of him for taking that vote, and I think we all owe him a great deal of gratitude for standing up on that vote. And I hope we'll get a little more of that stimulus money now, John. But it's very important for us because in Amesbury we've come a long way. The state has been a great partner over the years. When we've had the money, we've spent it in Amesbury. I've said it time and time again. Downtown renovations, the bricks, the lights, the infrastructure, that was all state money. The school, we've rehabbed 2 schools with a majority of state money. When we have the money, we spend the money. The upper mill yard. We're working on the lower mill yard with the Merrimack Valley Transit Authority. And we are continuing to figure out how we can make our city better and how we can draw and make our economy better. And we've been able to get projects to a shovel-ready state, which, without anticipating the stimulus package or the need for the stimulus package, we knew that if we were ready for projects, either the state through a bond authorization or through other means would come to our aid, and once we were ready they would help us. Well, that's put us in a great spot, I think, as this stimulus package comes through, because we're either shovel ready or we're very close. And I think you'll see things like the DPW issue, which the mayor put on his stimulus list, moving that over and letting us do some development in the lower mill yard and the transportation center. We're working very hard. We need about a $700,000 match to get about a $7 million project done. And I think that we'll see that hopefully in short order. So we're trying to prepare Amesbury for an economic continuing renaissance. And I'm very proud of the town I grew up in and the town I represent in Boston. And I couldn't be prouder over the last, I can't tell you since I've been there, and I know I've said it before, how many people have come to Amesbury and hadn't been here in a long time and said, what a place you got, what a town, what a beautiful town you have. And we've got a great group of people that are responsible for it. It has been a partnership. When the Alliance started, it was a partnership. It was a partnership with the government, of private industry, and of people. Nick's here. Nick was a planner during that time. I mean, there was a lot of work that went into creating the Amesbury that we know and enjoy and love. And we're situated in a wonderful spot with 495 and 95 where, our golden triangle. I know we're going to, Woody Cammett, I think, is probably, Woody's here. But we're talking about the 40R. I mean, the city council has taken the tools that hopefully we put together during the last economic downturn. We said, look, we got to have some tools to get fast permitting, to allow businesses to grow. Just past the 40R. That's going to allow us when we, excuse me? 40B, listen to me. No, 40, that was the R. It was 40R. We don't want 40B housing, do we? But the 40R, which is going to allow us to fast-track permitting. And we're looking at, when we do the bridge on Whittier, we're looking at how do we have access into that golden triangle area. Right now when you come south on 4, these are the simple micro things we look at on a daily basis. When you come south on 95, or strike that on 495, To get off and come into Amesbury, you got to cross over 110. You take your life into your own hands making that left-hand turn. You know, it would make imminent sense for us if we can, as we expand the Whittier Bridge and look at Whittier, to look at how we can do an off-ramp that would be north of 110, that would bring you into either the Golden Triangle or onto Elm Street. You know, a lot of the programs we've worked for and a lot of the money, engineering money we've brought back into the city and town through the budget, and people have different ideas about earmarks. Some say it's fat, I think it's integral. We know our districts better than anybody. We know how to spend the money in our districts better than, you know, sometimes bureaucrats in Boston or Washington, and that's why I think an earmark is important. But we've laid the groundwork, so I think we'll see the benefits. It's always a pleasure. I've been working with Stephen now for, this will be my 7th year. I think it's probably the hardest year, hardest couple of years we've had. We've had a big change in the House. We have new leadership in the House. And we've been working, regardless of what you read in the Globe. But, you know, I love the Globe. You know, Cullen's story yesterday about the hall, the Gardner Auditorium, and what type of shape it's in. And how, you know, how we should be ashamed of the hall. If we spent the money on the hall, the story would be, hey, look at how much money they spent at the State House to redo that hall. But those are the little things you're hearing about. And those things are really ridiculous. And I look at papers like the Globe that at one time I thought had substantive stories, and the Herald, and I see, you know, they're tuned into the negativity. They're tuned into this negativity that's out there. I think it does harm to us as a nation, it does harm to us as a state, and harm to us as a city. We have to be talking about the positive things, the positive hard work that's going on in government. There was a story yesterday that the House was working at a very slow pace this year. I can tell you, we have never worked as hard. You know, just because we're not sitting in that room taking votes, we're working very hard to prepare for what is going to be catastrophic economic times for us. And we're trying to figure out how we interface with the federal government with the stimulus money, how that might offset some of the pressures that we have. And I'll finish with this. In education, you know, we are all committed to it. I have an 8-year-old and a 5-year-old. You know, my 5-year-old school was closed during the first round of cuts that they had. And it was a small neighborhood school. They closed it. And, you know, we've worked very hard to maintain, you know, the good news is my 5-year-old has an excellent, my 8-year-old has an excellent teacher, and my 5-year-old has an excellent teacher. So no matter where they're going to school or what the physical surroundings, that teacher has made a big difference. And you know, that teacher has a lot of pressure on he or her. They have the pressure of, hey, do I have special ed? Can I do the special ed services I need? I got more kids in my class than I need to have an effective classroom. And that's why this stimulus package and the emphasis on education, quite frankly, is so important to me as a parent, never mind as a legislator, because it's going to allow us to start to take the pressure off of our education system and really enhance the way we educate our kids, because quite frankly, that's what our future is all about. So I could talk about a lot of things. These guys, see my colleagues whispering over here saying, hey, he'll keep going. And I know there'll be some questions. But I'm very honored to serve you. You know, I know most of you personally, and if I don't, I hope to get to meet you, and thanks for giving me the honor to serve.
Okay, so we are open for questions now. Mr. Sherrill.
Thank you. Matt Sherrill, Chairman of the Amesbury Chamber of Commerce. This question is more or less directed to all three of our honored guests today, and I know you've danced around it a little bit, but it has to do with the stimulus package money. You've used the term shovel ready. You've talked about 40R. You've talked about 43D zoning. All the things that the town has done to prepare for eventually stimulus money coming our way. We're also hearing rumors that a lot of this stimulus money is never going to make it to Amesbury. It's only going to be done at the state level. The state's going to handpick all of the projects that the state wants to do and then maybe filter it down to the towns. And we want to know, as the chamber, what are you guys going to do to make sure that that doesn't happen and that Amesbury remains at the top of your list?
Thank you. You know, there was a tremendous argument about how the money was going to be distributed all right across the board. Obviously, the governors wanted to have it all. You know, they wanted to be the ones calling the shots on that, so the National Governors Association was pounding away. Many of us felt that that wasn't the best way to do it. And so you'll see that the education money goes straight to the local education agencies, goes straight to the public higher education institutions, and that's a sizable amount of money. As I said before, about $27 billion on one end and another $34 billion coming through another channel that will go first to the governor, but then he has to spend it on bringing those education expenses back up to the 2008 level. Then there will be some areas where the communities will have to work with the governor on that in terms of how they're going to use some of the money he has set aside for public safety and general government purposes, of which one could be modernizing schools. So the mayors will have to be out there working with it, and the state reps and senators will impact on that. A lot of the grants, as I said, we'll be having a workshop for grants for people to be able to come in and find out how best to do the competitive grants on the sides of that. So existing formulas are used in a lot of cases. It will go the same way it's always gone. Competitive grants will be run, and we'll try to help people hook up with grant writers if they don't have one on that. And then there is a certain amount of money, that stabilization money that the governor has, that people will have to work with the governor to figure out how they're going to establish priorities on that. And the transportation monies will go down through the usual transportation formulas, but that has always been a state-driven concept on that. So people are going to have to work in that usual process and do that. That's why later today we'll have somebody from the governor's office with us. We're meeting with all of our people and trying to decide what's going to happen, and why it's important that your state rep, your state senator, and your mayor, and all of you weigh in with the governor as well and establish that. He's going to have far less money than there are projects. I think one of the things that I might have done differently if I were he and the lieutenant governors, I would not have asked all the cities and towns to send me a list of what you want. You know, you had to bring it in a wheelbarrow because every community had far more in their own community's needs than exists in the entire national bill. And they were just out there pumping stuff in. So setting priorities is going to be a difficult situation, and that's where the tussle comes in. And I think, I'm not going to answer for my colleagues here, but I think what you're going to find is they're going to work hard with the governor and fight for getting as much of it as they can up here, realizing the priorities are priorities. There are other areas that may on occasion have a need that's greater in a certain area.
Thanks, John. I would just add that it was one of the frustrations on the legislative side as well. The National Conference of State Legislators was also petitioning and arguing that the money that came in should not be solely at the discretion of a governor. Unfortunately, we didn't win that argument, but we were trying to figure out what legislative role opportunities there were for the legislature to jump in and help direct some of that money. It's why we came up with this sort of oversight committee that's made up of House and Senate members to ensure that the governor is picking projects from across the region. And one of the things the governor has been consistent and has consistently said is this money will not be Boston only. That he's going to take a regional approach to ensuring that money gets out to the different parts of the Commonwealth. So the Congressman's absolutely right. Everyone in this room that has an interest in ensuring that the lower mill yard gets funded and we move that garage should send a letter to the governor. So I would encourage you to get involved, the chamber and others. If there's a priority project, get it out to the governor, let Mike and I know, and we'll continue to fight for that.
One thing to the, you know, one of the issues that we have when we have a regular budget, you know, we can earmark something, and I think we've been very successful, and I think most of the folks and nonprofits around here can attest to how successful we've been. And most of the time, I'd say 70% of the earmarks we've gotten for our area have been vetoed, whether it was through the Romney administration or the current administration. And we've had to override those vetoes. So we've had to get a supermajority to override those vetoes. That's not the way it's going to be with the stimulus money. For us, we're going to be trying to persuade the governor, and if he says no, we don't have the ability to override the veto. So it's very important, and that's why we've been working closely with the mayors and making sure that chambers and mayors understand, and we'll be going to this meeting, and I appreciate John setting it up for us, so that we can come with a united voice on our projects, because that's going to be important. And again, we don't have as much influence over that money as we would like, but then again, it's not our money. And I laugh, I don't laugh, I find it somewhat amusing how the state has taken such I guess, proprietary role over this money when it's actually federal, the federal government that has appropriated it and done the work, and they're taking, you know, they're not coming after me if it fails, they're going after federal reps who took courageous stands. So that's my 2 cents.
Right. You want us to handle questions? Who's got questions? Wait a minute, councilors, you can do it anytime. We hear from you guys all the time. Wait. All the way in the back. You got, wait, I'm not here by myself. Wait, Michael, where you going? Too much talking. We heard your speech. We know.
You're going to make me, okay. All right. First for you, Senator Baddour, you had brought up the police details, and I'd like to know specifically what you've done, because, you know, it gets more and more frustrating as taxpayers and motorists to see the number of police details and to drive in New Hampshire, where they just have flagmen who frankly appear to do a far, far better job. They aren't sitting around drinking coffee, talking to people all the time. And I'd just like to know specifically what you have done as far as trying to eliminate or at least reduce those. I think there are some places where they still may be necessary. And then for both you and Representative Costello, and I know you don't want to be beleaguered about the bridge, but the Hines Bridge. But I don't, and I think Mike probably knows this better, it's a huge, huge issue to people. And it reflects on what you brought about taxpayer confidence and the lack thereof today. That bridge has probably been either closed or one way 7 of the last 15 years. There were so many chances when that could have been done before, when the chain bridge was out, and that sort of reflects on the way that we feel state government is doing things. Ass backwards almost all the time, it seems. And I'm not trying to be a hard ass about that, but it's the truth. And you need to do things to change the way that we feel. So I'd like to know your answers to both of those 2 things.
Steve, thank you. It's a very good question in terms of both the police details. Look, it's been tried in the past. We were never able to get the votes to do it. 2 years ago, the Senate President asked me to put together a transportation reform bill. We were doing the transportation bond bill. Not a comprehensive reform that we're doing now, but sort of chipping away at some of the issues that we've never been able to address. We put the police detail bill in there. And trust me when I tell you, more threats, I still get them today from friends of mine who are police officers. But at the same time, we tried to strike a balance. 49 other states can strike a balance between having flaggers and having police details and protecting public safety and saving taxpayer money. We tried to do that, and we did. The bill that passed the House and the Senate, was signed by the governor, strikes that appropriate balance. Every state in the country has police details, but every state also has flaggers, and Massachusetts will finally join those ranks. We're told, as you know, it's winter. As the season begins, the construction season begins, you will see more and more flaggers on state construction projects. That's a good thing. The next step is to ensure that cities and towns across the Commonwealth, when they're negotiating with police unions, require the same regulations that the state has now put into effect on local projects. So we're getting there. Look, it took a long time to get there. It was not easy. I've often said it's harder to reform the way states operate than it is to raise a tax. There are people who will take the money and run and not worry about taking on the status quo. It's not what Mike and I believe in. We've been fighting for the reforms, and we've done it. At the same time we did the police details, we recognized that Mass Highway was really an inept organization. They could not do simple things that other states were doing. They never took in line the best practices of other states. How do you get a bridge done quicker and do it in a way that makes sense? It absolutely made no sense that they did the Change Bridge and didn't do the Hines Bridge. It was crazy. So what we did as part of that reform bill was to mandate that Mass Highway adopt the best practices of other states, to streamline the projects, to look at ways of getting these projects done. Look, it's a bridge. It's going to take time to fix. There's no way around it. It's New England. There's weather. There's environmental issues. But they need to do things better, and they're doing that. We've heard that frustration. We did hearings all around the state. Everywhere you went, there was a bridge that was down, and people were frustrated, angry, and said a lot worse than the 3-letter word that you said when we went through those hearings. So people are mad. We're getting it. And I think the one good thing about a crisis, the one good thing about where we are today, is it breeds opportunity. There's an opportunity to do things differently, to do things that we would never do but for the crisis. And trust me, every day I'm in there, which I'm fighting to get the opportunities, whether it's not doing a 19-cent gas tax, I think that's crazy. It's way too high. We haven't even begun to reform the system yet, but we're doing that. So thank you for the question. Who else? We'll get you guys. All right, go ahead, Deb. Then.
We have another question. Oh, you're going to
Our current Title I and IDEA funding does not cover the cost of providing the services now. To what extent will we be able to use our Title I and IDEA special education funding to fill that gap in order to preserve our current services? In other words, what is the difference between supplant and supplement services? And is the local district given the flexibility to make this work for us?
Thank you. Look, what we tried to do is get the money directly out to the local education agency, and so we did. You're going to get your share of Title I money. It's going to come down, $5 billion straight to the local education under the formula, and $5 billion through the state through the formula directly down. Use it for any purpose in the Elementary and Secondary Education Act makes allowable, right? And just do it. The IDEA, the Individuals with Disability Education Act, you're going to get that straight down through the normal formula right to the community. Use it for whatever you use IDEA money for. Now, you can't use that as an excuse to walk away from the state's commitment to IDEA. You know, so that simply you cannot supplant it. You can't take the federal money and just walk out and not support the disabilities programs with your local money. So it has to be, you know, something that supplants, not supplemented. If some people have been saying, well, look, I guess we were robbing Peter to pay Paul, is what I heard when I got together with some of the superintendents. They've apparently been robbing other parts of the education monies and putting it into special ed. And that's how they've been funding it. Now, so we're all set on special ed. You know, so we don't want to, you know, that money may not be useful anymore. Well, find time to tell us now, Jack. But, you know, we had been hearing for years and years of how desperate people were for our disability money. And now we find out they've been robbing money from somewhere else to put it in. Well, money's fungible. Switch around your process, put the money back wherever you were taking it from, and use the IDEA money where it is. If push comes to shove and you find you can't do that, there's a waiver provision that the secretary can be asked to have a waiver. I don't think it's a simple process, and it wouldn't probably be the fastest way to go. But there is that aspect to it that can be done. But I think most of us were pretty stunned after hearing for the last 12 to 14 years of how desperate people were for money from the federal government, for more money for IDEA, that when we got it, some people said, well, gee, didn't we tell you we're already spending that money because we took it from somewhere else? You know, so you've got to reorganize your spending priorities to take advantage of that money. You know, we can't do that for you. We can get you the money, but then you've got to figure out how you're going to do it and put it to best use so that it works out in that way. And then the other part is when, in addition to that money, which is a substantial amount of money here in Massachusetts and in Amesbury, you're going to get additional monies down to bring up to the 2008 fiscal year amounts for education K through 12 and for higher education. And when that's done, there'll be anything left over come back down for you for the use of anything you would use it for, IDEA, Title I, Perkins, any of those acts. And if you then can go to the governor and say you also want to do some modernization of your schools and do that as well.
Hello, my name is Nancy White, and I'm a new business owner here in Amesbury. I'm part of at least 7 new businesses that have started in Amesbury over the last couple of months. I moved here from New Hampshire. So, my question. About a month and a half ago, I attended a conference of the EGO Collaborative of the Greater Newburyport area. And that particular conference dealt with growing local value. And I'd like to hear what you have to say about supporting things such as farmers markets without the requirement of having hand washing stations, so that local value and growing that participation from those here instead of the corporate large box stores, which brings money out of the area and out of the state. Also, just a comment that this weekend in Washington is probably the greatest gathering of students around the U.S. to demand of our government eco-friendly jobs now. So you'll be hearing more about that this weekend, but just your comments about that, please.
I'm going to take the latter part of that and kick the first part to Michael. But the on that, but I tell you, I'm smiling only because you talk about the latter part. On Valentine's Day, even though I was in Washington, the local students from Amesbury showed up with Valentine's, thanking us for the Green Jobs Act. And so eco jobs, environmentally friendly jobs, energy efficiency, and alternative jobs. We get it. That's why I drafted the Green Jobs Act. That's why we put $500 million in the Recovery and Reinvestment Act, and that's why we put additional money in the regular annual spending bill that came out. But it's an exciting concept. If you think about what we can do in terms of a particular industry that is growing, that we can not only be in front of locally, but take it nationally and take it internationally as well. We're right now behind Germany, behind Japan, behind some other countries in solar and wind and biomass. We can certainly turn that around if we have the people that are qualified to do the jobs. We put money in the bills for research, for development, for new laboratories, to help companies get started up, and the small business innovative research grants to help them get their product to market once they've developed it. And now we're going to create a workforce for them that's going to drive this forward. One of the things that I'm going to recommend to Steve and Mike and to the governor is that as a district in this, while they're all looking for what priorities are for individual projects, I think we ought to put together all of the energy efficiency projects that we have in the 6th district and tell the governor that's one. We want them all funded. We want to be able to measure how many people we train to take on a new job, how many people actually go to work at that and what they're making as a living wage, how many buildings we actually retrofit so that now we're saving money in the long run so we don't have to lay off municipal workers or others because the cost of energy is too high, and then be able to show people this is what we have that took care of an immediate problem and got us ready for the future as well. So we'll be working on that. Michael?
Thank you. I'll put a bill in so they don't have to wash their hands when they hand that fruit out. You know, quite frankly, when you look at Amesbury, when you look at any environmental group, this year they have all said that the legislature in the last session had the greatest legislative year as far as environmental bills in action we've taken. We had the oceans bill, we had the energy bill, and I would encourage you, if you're a small business owner, to take a look at the energy bill. There's all sorts of, prior to the stimulus bill, there was a bill we put out that said, look, take advantage of renewable energy. We've had Ian Bowles up to our district 2 or 3 times from the OEA. You've been reading about the windmill in Newburyport. Some people don't like the flicker or lights. I have a different view of that windmill. I think it's a great symbol for us as I drive up Route 1 to think about the renewable energy. That woodworking facility has a biomass furnace. That wasn't going to be funded, or that wasn't going to be permitted under the strict regulations. We had to go see the former secretary of the OEA to come in, actually look at the furnace and say, you know what, we're going to pilot this, so we're not going to go through massive regulation. So you got an industry that's giving its own energy, producing probably more energy than it needs, and we're going green. You know, that's not it's a cliche now to say we're going green, but I think anyone in the business world that's looking at investing money, looking at where the incentives are, looking at where our future and jobs and, quite frankly, our homeland security issues that I deal with. You know, we look at, hey, we want to be homegrown energy. We want to become energy independent, and this is a twofer, as I think the Congressman said. So, homegrown is big to us. We have Cider Hill. We have, I mean, when I bring people into my district, they see, you know, Jay Gould's here. I mean, look at, I know he's got a place in Maui, but he started here in the back of the mill yard that we helped get the money to fund. So we're all interconnected. I hear what you're saying. We're very proud of our local community and the products, and look forward to working with you to make them more accessible. So.
One quick statement. I can never say no to Nick. I'm sorry.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to take a minute to say thank you all for coming up here today and participating in this luncheon. It's very important that we hear what you're thinking. You know, we read it, but when you hear it firsthand, it means an awful lot. But I wanted to especially say that it seems to me over the last few years, there's been a philosophy, a way of thinking in Washington especially, that, you know, this top 1%. This room is full of people who are business people, but we're certainly not part of the 1% that got all the breaks. And I'm glad to see that this stimulus package is talking about plugging up those holes, because for so long, the philosophy has been, you give us the money and we'll create the jobs. I think it should be turned around to be saying, hey, we'll show you where we're going to create the jobs, then you give us the money. And I think that's what you've been saying here today. I'm glad to hear that that philosophical change has been made. Thanks.
I know everybody has to get back out into the 50-degree weather, but from the bottom of my heart, I thank you guys. I thank you for everything that you're doing, for fighting for us, the people, and being our voice. It really means a lot, I think, to everybody in this room, so thank you. And of course, I have to, it's always necessary to plug the chamber, amesburychamber.com, all the information you need. I highly recommend that you go out a different door that you came in so you can see all of the changes and everything that is happening in Amesbury in case you haven't walked around town lately. So thank you very much. Have a great weekend.